witness there saying the officer was there trying to calm him down. Eventually, after a minute or so, that's when the officer was observed by all these other witnesses that are non-law enforcement. They observed him retrieving his taser and attempting to get him under control. The taser is important because when they get the download report, they found out that in that particular taser from Alanis, there's 6 trigger pulls. Each one of those had the ability to deliver the voltage that would usually bring a normal person down. It did not do that. Officer Flanagan arrives on scene, and as you could see from his camera, since video is important, and I've said this from the very beginning, all of this video is important. If you look at the dash cam from Officer Flanagan when he pulls up, you could see that he is under the effects of the taser still. So all of those sequence of taser events that had occurred prior to that, we got to assume that since the tasers were still attacked, the probes were still attacked when that dash cam caught it. So we got to assume that those 6 or 5 prior taser events had the effect of sending some kind of electrical current. They had no effect, and even if after that initial taser deployment, it seemed that it was having the effect because you could see his arm is immobilized. You could see the arms immobilized.
The shots were fired in the intersection.
Hold on.
6 years ago, I was poisoned with PCP and I was sent to the hospital. Did the police taser me? Did they shoot me?
Okay.
No.
Can I follow up with your question?
Subdued me with 5 police officers. I was poisoned by a party. What's to say that this man was not poisoned? Why is it that mens rea applies to the police but not him as a victim? What's to say that he was poisoned? Why couldn't the police just charge him? They are trained to de-escalate a situation, and their standards of de-escalation does not even meet the minimum of de-escalation by the military.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can I speak?
So 3 cops, from Officer Flanagan, the one that went across the intersection.
Yes.
Does that not qualify for public endangerment since it is a public intersection or a busy intersection during rush hour?
No, again, and that was the concern that many people have. That's a concern I have, and that's something that is probably going to be looked at on the civil side. Again, I am limited, and this is following our state law. It says shall not be criminally liable with under the circumstances. Again, I think most people would take, if any one of you had a 5-pound rock thrown at you, I think most people would determine that that rock is a deadly weapon and how that was used in that case. That is the basis of all these officers. All of these officers. These officers have the same constitutional rights as everybody else. They chose to all give voluntary statements. They chose to give voluntary statements. They gave statements that had to be measured up with all the 51 other citizen witnesses out there. This isn't something that, oh, just the officers, what they say matters. We've compared that with the observations of all 51 other witnesses. And so 51 witnesses, and some of those witness videos, one of the witness videos only came, it was after a month after this. This is the one that actually captures Mr. Zambrano chasing after the officer with a large rock in his hand at the time. So I appreciate all the citizens that have come forward and provided those videos and provided that information, and I appreciate the fact that citizens had come forward. I had reached out to some witnesses on here that were very against the action taken by the police, but they failed to respond to our request. We sent out certified letters. Those came back as delivered, but they still failed to follow up with me, even though they said they wanted to talk with me at our forum that we had back at CBC.
Chief, are you prepared for the outlash of this community after this press conference? What has the police department done to prepare yourselves for any outlash after this press conference?
We are prepared. We've done a lot of work with the community. We'll continue to work with our community. And we will make sure we have a safe community. And we do. We have a very good community here. And we're very proud to work with this community.
And I should add that too. Somebody did ask. You know, this case was actually sent to DOJ even before it hit my office. A week before I received the copy of the reports, the DOJ is reviewing this as well, and I would welcome any outside agency to review it. I believe probably the Attorney General's office may be asked to review this case, and I welcome that. I think any review of these type of cases is important, and we have to make I'm not the one that would have to evaluate that. You'd have to look at Michael Armsby. He's the U.S. attorney for this area and region, and that's what DOJ is looking at. DOJ is looking at a Section 1983 action under civil rights, whether or not a civil rights violation occurred. That's a completely separate analysis. They wanted to wait until we concluded the state criminal charge review before they review their case further. But they have had the case as long as I don't know how long their timeline is before they make a final decision, but I know that they've actually interacted locally. I think they triggered some earlier interactions with members in the community, I think with the police department. And so, again, I'm the prosecutor tasked with a very specific and limited responsibility on this particular case. That's why I'm saying I want to go and I want to continue to participate in these discussions, because I'm a firm advocate that we need to have the ability to deal with these drug issues. We need to have ability to deal with the mental health issues and other crises. We hope to avoid these circumstances because we recognize obviously this is a detrimental effect. So we want to look at it.
Chief, I have a question for the chief. Out of all those shots that were fired, are you satisfied that all those shots were needed to fire upon him and kill him like he did?
That's what the internal investigation.
No. I'm asking you. I'm asking you the
That's
question.
the question for you.
Then I'm giving an answer. And the answer is when the internal investigation.
No. I don't care about that. I'm asking you about the question.
I don't have the answer yet because I haven't got the investigation complete.
17 counts.
So really, what you condone?
What I'm
the
saying
17
is
shots?
the investigation is not complete.
Do you condone the 17
The
shots?
investigation is not complete.
Excuse me?
The investigation is not complete.
Chief Master, let's rephrase it. Are officers trained to check whatever is behind what they're shooting at before they fire any shots, especially in public areas? Is that part of officer training?
Yes,
Do you feel like that officer training was followed and carried through in this instance?
that's what we're looking into now.
Okay, based on the tremendous latitude that police officers have through the legislature in how to use excessive force or how to use deadly force, in your opinion, what would it have taken for you to say this is excessive or there was malice here? Because I don't understand how you could sit back, read a report and say, I detect malice in this individual, or I believe that there was not good faith. What exactly would constitute excessive use of force and malice?
Well, you're asking me to speculate on a difficult case, but let me just apply what I've done in this particular case. In looking at this case, what I looked at from all the witness statements, going through each and every one of those witness statements, that's 51 of our citizen members in our community that gave an account. These are the ones that identify themselves to law enforcement, all of them, and we've even evaluated. Like I told you, of these witness statements, there is some of them that are very opposed to the ultimate shooting. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all 51 support the final action taken by police. But what I'm saying is all of these citizens, members of our community, observing what was going on, this was obviously a dangerous situation. There was a call to 911. Officer Alanis drives by the area. He returns back. He discovers a person that's throwing rock. Hold on. You asked me for the question. So when we evaluate the case of whether or not we can charge, I'm looking at a case where here's an individual that is attempted with the most least use of force possible, which is the verbal commands. Officer Alanis is trying to communicate with this guy. Hey, calm it down. This is the description from members of our community saying the officer arrived. He's sitting there. Hey, calm down. Try to discuss. He's picking up rocks. He's starting to act like he's threatening. He ends up throwing several of those rocks. And so eventually that officer had to resort to drawing his taser. And even after drawing the taser, that individual is still throwing these large rocks at the officers. If the rock was being thrown at you, that would constitute a deadly use of force, and you would be justified in using a reasonable use of force to stop it, just like officers. Now, the difference is with officers, though, you and I, we all can have a different opinion and say, you know what, we don't think that's reasonable. But that's not the standard that we have to apply. What we have to apply is it unreasonable?
I understand that. And the legislature gives them that authority. My question was, at what point does all of the force, from verbal commands to lasers to, they didn't use their batons or the non-lethal weapons that they had, they went directly to their weapons, lethal weapons. At what point does it become excessive? At what point is that type of violence necessary to subdue a person?
And that is an excellent question, because one of the things that came about for this investigation, 2 of the officers had less lethal shotgun in their trunk. but there was no time, one, to grab it, and two, to deploy it, because still, you don't use those objects unless you have someone else that's going to provide lethal cover. They're already providing lethal cover because they're facing a lethal threat. But here's the point that I think was really important in this case to me in evaluating this situation. When the officers first fired, I think perhaps people will disagree, but when you see the 5-pound rock that's captured on the video from the various sides, the various angles, you see the 5-pound rock come at the officer Alanis. He had to duck out of the way. That's when the 2 remaining officers that had their eye on him fired, and they chose to fire. They stopped. That was a total of 5 shots, and they even hit him in the arm, the very arm that was delivering the threat, the use of force by Zambrano. They hit his arm. Many people say, hey, why don't you shoot him in the leg? That's not how officers are trained, but unfortunately, that's what happened in this case. They actually hit him in the arm, and that did not stop him. He was still able to raise his arm with an almost 3-pound object that was being used as deadly force.
In that situation, there couldn't have ever been excessive force because that man, through his actions, signed his death warrant.
The question, the question and evaluation is everything that the officers had done up to that point, was their actions reasonable? I have to prove, to charge criminal charges against the officers, I have to prove that I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that their actions were unreasonable. When I've got 51 other witnesses, even witnesses saying that, hey, this is an unjust shoot. In fact, some of these witnesses saying, hey, this is dirty, this is bad. But those witnesses described absolutely the same accounts that the officers gave, in that there was a deadly force and a deadly use of force being threatened to the officers. That account alone is what we have to evaluate as citizens in the community. Is that reasonable? Is it reasonable for the officers to be able to defend themselves when they have the...
We're talking about excessive. At what point?
But again, you're asking me 2 different questions, because as prosecutor...
No, that's the same question over and over
as
again.
prosecutor, my job is not to determine excessive. My job is to determine, was there a criminal act committed by the officers outside of the statute that is specifically intended to provide officers that respond to these life and death situations. They have to make split-second decisions. I have to look at, is it reasonable? If they simply showed up at the case and all he had was a rock in his hand and they decided to drop him because they said, hey, rocks can be deadly weapons, that wasn't the case here. The case that we're evaluating is a case where multiple rocks of various sizes, and these are descriptions. I'm not using just the descriptions from officers. I'm using the descriptions of softball, cantaloupe size, as coming from the other witnesses that were there at the scene. There was 13 pounds of concrete that was found at the scene. The rock that was thrown at the time of the officer that landed near the center line of 10th Avenue, recovered with Zambrano's DNA on it. That was a 5-pound rock. That was a 5-pound object that was thrown at him. I'm sorry if you disagree that that's a deadly weapon. We'll just have to part ways. But when looking at the circumstances of this, the fact that Officer Alanis and both Flanagan had tried to get him down, they're calling out for help. They're calling for cover code 3 because that is a code out to all officers that, hey, we need help. We're facing an imminent threat. This situation's out of control. Officer Wright responds to the scene. The first thing that he's actually describing is seeing the size of these large rocks in Mr. Zambrano's hand. He knows after the first rock is thrown that he is still armed, even after he is shot. Even after there's evidence of blood being carried through this crosswalk, there is evidence that he has been injured, and he still raises that rock in his hand, in his right hand, when he gets across. The officers didn't shoot him there. They followed him, hoping that this would result in a peaceful resolution, that, hey, maybe we just follow him, and then either he will figure out that, hey, I'm trying to stop, I'm going to subdue. And that's where we get into now the final turn. You know, one witness described that final turn as that he was coming around with a gun. The officers didn't exaggerate. The officers didn't say, hey, we thought he had a gun. They might have been able to do that, because I tell you, when I watched the video, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that, wow, is he coming around? But hold on. But hold on. That's not what the officer said. The officer said that he was turning around with the rock that had previously been thrown at them time and time again in the lot across the street.
In the middle here.
This is Craig Luttrell.